When my mother-in-law laughed at my cheap shoes in the middle of a crowded restaurant, I smiled politely and tried to pretend I didn't hear her. But when my husband's sisters joined in, pointing under the table and giggling like schoolgirls, something inside me cracked. I told myself to keep calm, to swallow the humiliation, but the truth is I'll never forget the sting of that night. What they didn't know is that I wasn't the woman they thought I was. And by the end of that dinner, they would be the ones left silent, choking on their arrogance. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Elena, and I never thought marrying into a wealthy family would feel like walking into enemy territory. You see, I didn't grow up with silver spoons or designer handbags. I grew up with a single mom who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. I've always been proud of my background. It made me strong, independent, and resilient. But apparently, to my husband's family, all of that translated to unworthy. The first time I stepped into their favorite high-end restaurant, I knew I was already being judged. The marble floors glistened under the soft glow of chandeliers. Waiters in crisp black uniforms moved swiftly between tables, and the smell of roasted garlic and butter clung to the air. It was the kind of place where everyone wore elegance like armor. And there I was, in a simple black dress, and my favorite pair of beige flats, the ones I'd worn to countless work events, the ones I felt comfortable in, the ones that my husband's family would later ridicule. From the very moment I sat down, I could feel their eyes on me. My mother-in-law, Patricia, leaned back in her chair with that cold smile of hers, the kind that never reached her eyes. "Elena," she said, drawing out my name as though it were something sour in her mouth. "So glad you could join us." Her daughters, Amelia and Chloe, smirked at each other like they shared an inside joke. Their manicured fingers tapped against the wine glasses, perfectly timed to their shallow giggles. My father-in-law sat stiff and silent, pretending to skim through the menu, though I could sense the same disapproval radiating off him. I tried to be gracious. I really did. I complimented Patricia on her jewelry, asked Amelia about her art classes, even laughed at Chloe's story about her shopping trip in Paris. But every response I gave seemed to fuel their amusement. Amelia raised a brow and asked, "So Elena, where exactly did you buy that dress? It looks comfortable." The word dripped with condescension, like comfortable was just another way of saying cheap. Chloe leaned closer to her sister and whispered loudly enough for me to hear, probably from one of those bargain racks. They both snickered, covering their mouths with their hands as though that could mask their cruelty. And my husband, he sat right next to me, staring down at the menu as though it contained all the answers to life's problems. I nudged him lightly, hoping he'd speak up, but he only muttered, "Just ignore them. That's how they are." I forced myself to smile, to nod, to act as though their words didn't burn holes through me. Just ignore them. That's what he always said. And for a while, I convinced myself I could. After all, I didn't marry them, I married him. But the truth is, when you marry into a family, you don't just take on the person you love. You inherit their world, their opinions, their judgment. The waiter came by to take our orders, and for a brief moment, I thought the tension might ease. Patricia ordered filet mignon, rare, with an expensive bottle of red. Amelia wanted lobster. Chloe asked for oysters, of course. When it was my turn, I kept it simple: grilled chicken and vegetables. That's when Patricia tilted her head, that sly smile curling at the corners of her lips. "Chicken," she repeated, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "How modest of you." The sisters snickered again, clinking their glasses like they'd just shared the funniest joke in the world. I felt the heat crawl up my neck, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of reacting. I simply pressed my lips together and told myself, "You can get through this." But then came the moment that tipped everything over the edge. Patricia leaned back, glanced down at my feet, and announced in a voice dripping with mock sympathy, "Oh dear. Elena, are those really the shoes you wore tonight?" My stomach dropped. I froze. She was looking straight at my flats, the ones I loved, the ones that had carried me through endless days of hard work and long nights of dedication. Amelia and Chloe followed her gaze, and soon they were both doubled over in laughter, pointing beneath the table. "Oh my God, look at them," Chloe gasped between giggles. "They're so plain." "Plain," Amelia scoffed. "They're cheap." I think I saw something like that at the discount store by the mall. Patricia chuckled, shaking her head as though I were some pitiful creature. Well, I suppose comfort is more important than class, isn't it? The laughter bubbled around the table, echoing louder than the chatter of the restaurant. People at nearby tables were starting to glance over, curiosity sparking in their eyes. And there I was, sitting in the middle of it all, smiling as though their cruelty was just harmless banter. Inside, my heart ached. Every word, every laugh, every pointed look dug into me like tiny knives. I told myself not to cry, not to let them see the effect they had on me. I thought of my mother, of how hard she'd worked to give me the life I had, and I reminded myself that my worth wasn't defined by a pair of shoes. Still, I sat there, laughing softly along with them, as though I were in on the joke. Because in that moment, I didn't have the strength to fight back. Not yet. But as I stared down at my plate, pretending not to hear their laughter, I made myself a promise. A quiet, burning promise deep in my chest. This will not be the way my story ends. They may laugh tonight, but one day, they'll see me for who I truly am. And little did I know, that day was coming sooner than any of us expected. The night after that dinner, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every laugh, every whisper, every cruel glance. No matter how much I tried to shake it off, their voices echoed in my head. Cheap shoes, discount rack. So modest. I told myself it was just one evening, that maybe next time they'd be kinder. But deep down, I knew better. Their laughter wasn't a mistake, it was who they were. When I finally turned to my husband, Daniel, who was already half asleep beside me, I whispered, "Why didn't you say anything?" He sighed, rolling onto his back. "Elena, they didn't mean it like that. That's just how they are. My family jokes around all the time." I stared at him in disbelief. Jokes? Was humiliation supposed to be funny? "They weren't joking," I said quietly. "They were mocking me. In front of you. In front of everyone." He rubbed his eyes and groaned. "You're overthinking this. You know my mom. She has a sharp tongue, but she doesn't hate you." I wanted to scream, but instead, I bit my lip until I tasted blood. It was easier to stay quiet than to argue with someone who refused to see the truth. "Fine," I murmured, rolling onto my side. But as my eyes stared into the darkness, I knew something had shifted inside me. The days that followed were a blur of polite texts and forced smiles. Patricia sent Daniel pictures of expensive handbags she'd bought for fun, always followed by a snide little comment, "Maybe Elena should try one of these." She'd finally look the part. Amelia posted Instagram stories from her shopping trips, tagging her sisters, and writing captions like "Some people will never understand quality." And Chloe, well, Chloe was the worst. She would send Daniel links to luxury shoes with the message, "Maybe a gift idea for your wife, so she doesn't embarrass you next time." Daniel laughed at those. Actually laughed. "They're just teasing," he said. Teasing. That word made my skin crawl. Teasing was playful. Teasing was harmless. This wasn't teasing, this was cruelty dressed up as sophistication. And my husband, the man who was supposed to be my partner, refused to see it. One evening, as I stood in front of the mirror, I caught myself holding a pair of glossy black heels still in their box. They were a gift I'd bought for myself months ago, expensive ones I never even wore. For a moment, I thought about putting them on for the next dinner, about blending in and silencing their laughter. But as I slipped my feet into them, I felt wrong. They weren't me. I wasn't a woman who needed validation from a family that looked down on me. I wasn't someone who had to prove herself with brand names and labels. I had built my life on grit, sacrifice, and determination. While they lived in luxury, cushioned by generational wealth, I had worked my way from nothing to building a company that mattered. A company that gave back to people who truly needed it. That was when the fire inside me sparked. They wanted to see me as small, as insignificant, as less than them. But the truth was I had more power in my hands than they could ever imagine. 2 days later, Patricia called Daniel. Her voice, dripping with false warmth, carried through the speakerphone. "We're all having dinner again at the restaurant this Friday. Bring Elena along. We want to give her another chance to get to know us better." Another chance. Those words made me laugh bitterly under my breath. Another chance for them to ridicule me, to strip away my dignity piece by piece. Daniel, of course, jumped at the invitation. "Of course, Mom. We'll be there. When he hung up, he turned to me with a grin. See? They're trying. They invited you again. I didn't correct him. I didn't tell him that his family didn't want to try. They wanted another performance, another opportunity to remind me of my place. Instead, I smiled sweetly and said that sounds wonderful. That night, as I laid out my outfit for the dinner, I reached for those same beige flats, the ones they had mocked, the ones they believed to find me. I polished them until they shone under the light, each stroke of the cloth strengthening my resolve. Because this time, I wasn't walking into their trap as a victim. This time, I was going in with the truth on my side. On Friday evening, as we got ready, Daniel glanced at my shoes and hesitated. "You're wearing those again?" he asked carefully. "Yes," I said firmly, slipping them on. He frowned. "You know how my family is. Maybe just wear the black heels? They'll respect you more." I looked him in the eye, my voice steady. "If their respect depends on my shoes, then I don't want it." He opened his mouth to argue, but something in my expression must have stopped him. He fell silent, shaking his head as though I were being unreasonable. But I didn't care. As we drove to the restaurant, the city lights flickering past the windows, I felt an odd calm settle over me. The same family who had tried to break me with their laughter was about to choke on the truth. They had no idea that the place they flaunted so proudly, the place they believed represented their status and superiority, only existed because of me. I didn't need expensive heels or designer handbags to prove myself. I didn't need to raise my voice or fight back with their same cruelty. All I needed was patience. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It's silent. And it's waiting for the right moment. That moment was closer than they thought. The moment I stepped back into that restaurant, I could feel the familiar weight of judgment pressing down on me. The same polished marble floors, the same glittering chandeliers, the same air thick with butter and wine. But this time, I wasn't nervous. This time, I wasn't walking in with hope that they'd accept me. I was walking in with the truth they couldn't escape. Patricia spotted us first. She sat at the head of the table, a queen in her castle, her lips curling into that sharp little smile that always carried more venom than warmth. Amelia and Chloe flanked her, both dressed to perfection, their eyes sweeping over me the second I sat down. And just like that, the whispers began. Amelia leaned toward Chloe, her voice barely hushed. "She's wearing them again." Chloe let out a soft snicker. "Of course she is. I told you." Patricia didn't bother hiding her disdain. She glanced down at my shoes, then back at me, her brows arched in mock surprise. "Well, Elena, at least you're consistent." Their laughter trickled around the table, light and cruel. I could feel the familiar sting, the same ache that had burned in me the last time. But instead of shrinking under it, I straightened my back and folded my hands neatly on the table. I wasn't here to fight. I was here to let the truth do the talking. Daniel sat beside me, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. He muttered something under his breath, but no one paid him any mind. His silence had become routine, expected. The waiter approached, his notepad in hand, his expression neutral as he began jotting down orders. Patricia ordered steak again. Amelia wanted lobster. Chloe asked for oysters. They recited their choices like royalty accustomed to being served. When it was my turn, I smiled. "Grilled chicken and vegetables, please." I saw Patricia's lips twitch, a smile she barely suppressed. Amelia let out a quiet laugh. Chloe smirked. But then, something shifted. The waiter, pen still poised above the notepad, froze. His eyes flicked from the page to my face, recognition sparking like a flame. He lowered the pen, his lips parting as though he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "Ma'am," he said, his voice reverent, respectful, almost trembling. It's an honor to have you here." The table went silent. Forks paused midair, glasses hovered in half-finished toasts. Patricia blinked. "Excuse me." The waiter didn't even glance at her. His focus was on me. "Your company's foundation sponsored the entire renovation of this restaurant. Everything you see, the floors, the lighting, the kitchen, it's all thanks to your generosity. None of us would even have our jobs without you." My heart swelled, not with pride, but with relief. Finally, the truth was out. Patricia's face drained of color. Amelia's jaw dropped. Chloe's smirk faltered. Daniel's eyes widened as he looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I gave the waiter a kind smile. Thank you. I'm happy to support local businesses. He nodded, still flustered, then excused himself to give us time. But the damage had been done. The air around the table had shifted completely. No one laughed now. Patricia cleared her throat, fumbling with her napkin. Elena. I didn't realize. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice gentle, calm, almost too polite. You didn't ask. Her mouth opened, then closed again. For once, Patricia had no clever remark, no biting insult. Amelia twisted her napkin in her hands, her cheeks flushed. We didn't know you, your company. I tilted my head, watching her squirm. You didn't know because you didn't care to know. All you saw was what I was wearing. Chloe stared at me, speechless. Her eyes darted down to my shoes, then back to my face, the realization dawning on her like a cruel joke turned back on itself. Daniel finally broke the silence. Elena, you never told me. His voice was soft, filled with a mix of awe and regret. I looked at him, my expression steady. Because I didn't think I had to. The rest of the dinner passed in a strained, uncomfortable quiet atmosphere. No more whispers, no more laughter. The only sounds were the clinking of silverware and the occasional nervous cough. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking at the table. They were. When dessert arrived, the restaurant manager himself came out to personally thank me. He shook my hand warmly, spoke about the community programs we'd funded, and how much the staff admired the work my company had done. Every word was another nail in the coffin of their arrogance. Patricia forced a smile, nodding along, but her eyes betrayed her discomfort. Amelia and Chloe barely touched their plates, their appetite gone. I sat there calmly, savoring each bite of my dessert, each second of their silence. My cheap shoes tapped lightly against the marble floor, echoing louder than any insult they had ever thrown at me. By the time we stood to leave, the silence was deafening. No one dared comment on my shoes again. No one dared laugh. As I walked out of that restaurant, head held high, I felt the weight of their judgment lift from my shoulders. They had tried to humiliate me, to strip me of my dignity, but in the end, they were the ones left exposed, petty, shallow, and powerless in the face of truth. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to, because the sweetest revenge is not in shouting or proving someone wrong. It's in standing tall while they crumble in silence. And with every step I took in those cheap shoes, I reminded myself I never needed their approval. They needed mine. They thought I wasn't good enough for their world. But the truth is, their world wouldn't exist without me. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Trust me, the next one is even wilder. And tell me in the comments, has anyone ever judged you for how you looked, only to discover the truth about who you really are? I'd love to hear your story.